So in this segment, we're going to be debunking another Telegraph article about the Northern Ireland Protocol, which the writer Juliet Samuel says EU arrogance and Unionist divisions threaten to plunge Northern Ireland into an even greater crisis. Which, okay, it's more to do with the Unionists, to be honest. This article, you can see how scared these people are of Sinn Féin winning the seat of first minister. It genuinely scares them a lot. But, it's democracy, isn't it? So, Partygate is once again gripping Westminster just 2 weeks ahead of the local elections. But there's at least one part of the UK where voters have other priorities, Northern Ireland. Recent politics in Northern Ireland have involved a bomb threat, riots, a brick thrown at a constituency window, and a rally where loyalist protesters put a noose around a picture of a moderate unionist politician. So, this one, right, is funny because what you have here is violence from unionists against other unionists. So look at this, right? A rally where loyalists, so these are people loyal to, that's what they call unionists, people loyal to Queen and country, right? Or just the Queen, really. Put a noose around a picture of a unionist politician. That's how bad the situation has gotten. They're turning against each other. The elections there look likely to be at the moment when Sinn Féin, the hardline Irish nationalist party, wins the province premiership for the first time with unknown results. All is not well. And the thing is, right, it does show you that with them pushing, I'm not super familiar with what Sinn Féin are doing to win right now, but they are focusing a lot on the cost of living crisis and not talking about Irish reunification that much, talking about bread and butter issues rather than talking about the Northern Ireland Protocol, because I don't think people really care that much about the protocol. It's fairly favourable in Northern Ireland compared to the problems in the NHS, the rising cost of living, amongst other things. It very much reminds me of Lenin's Peace, Land and Bread take on this. Sinn Féin are doing really well. Against this backdrop, with the negotiations over for the Irish Protocol, the UK government has come up with a new sabre to rattle at the EU. This time it's not Article 16, but the government law that they've leaked via the papers, which could override the protocol entirely. We've spoken about that at length, but what they're doing is they're going to avoid problems with British law by getting rid of certain bits of the protocol in law, so then they can try to bypass the British courts. The law would doubtless be challenged by the EU and in our courts, but Johnson and Liz Truss appear to think that a new legal dynamic might break the deadlock. Let's not forget this will be backed potentially by Suella Braverman, who is not very smart. She talks about at this point here, there is no quick fix for this unfinished Brexit business, but it was finished because you guys said get Brexit done. You guys said get Brexit done in 2019, so how is it not done? Unless you lied in the election, which you obviously did do. So it's just a joke when they argue, it's unfinished business. So I think Steve Baker argues the same thing. It's finished. It's over. You agreed to the Northern Ireland Protocol. You agreed to the withdrawal agreement. What's left to do apart from make tweaks to the protocol? That's it. Because if you're saying it causes fundamental problems, that means you ran an election based on fundamental problems that you knew would happen. Joke, honestly. There is no quick fix for this unfinished business. When Ms Truss arrived at the Foreign Office last September, she gave her officials until March this year to strike a new deal for the Northern Ireland Protocol. Didn't happen. The protocol is that whatever Westminster does, it can't fix the underlying issue because it created it. That's why. It's in international law now. The Americans are looking at us thinking, what are you doing, guys? That you're looking at us thinking, what are you doing, guys? And, we're looking at this government, or at least I am thinking, what the hell are you guys doing? Which is the underlying issue, blah, blah, blah. Unhappy as they are about the protocol, the Unionists are badly split between the hardliners and the moderates. So people who don't like the protocol but will accept it, and people who won't accept the protocol at all. That's where the split is. Which shows you that there is some favourability, not necessarily happy with the protocol amongst some Unionists, but they'll tolerate it. Big difference. The May elections are likely to make this even clearer. Even if the Unionists cannot speak with one voice and force the EU to take them seriously, which they've tried to do, but no one's going to take them seriously. The British government doesn't take them seriously. There can be no resolution. In theory, Unionist hardliners should be in the ascendant. Why? Why should they be doing well when all they've done, instead of focus on the cost of living crisis and day-to-day issues, they've moaned about the protocol and said, it's going to go tomorrow, it's gone. That's all they've done for the past year. The protocol imposes a border down the Irish Sea that manifestly changed the constitutional agreement between Northern Ireland and GB without Unionist consent. But you never, had you asked in 2019 when you come up with this idea of the protocol, you should have asked for Union consent then, not now. Because back then you didn't care about them. You knew what the problems were going to be. You didn't care then. You don't care now. You're just looking to make problems. The EU won't renegotiate because they don't have to. And truth be told, I don't think they should, because it's a bad precedent for them, and also the fact that we've come up with diddly squat in how to deal with the border problems. Where do you put the border? You put it in the Irish Sea, makes the most sense. You can't put it in the island of Ireland, and you can't put it around the Irish Sea. You can't use it to take Ireland out of the EU single market and customs union for goods. So what else can you do at this point? Especially if the UK won't rejoin the single market and customs union for goods. The protocol requires Northern Ireland's Assembly to hold a highly provocative, it's not provocative, every 4 years there's a consent vote. It's in 2024, it's not provocative, it's do you accept this? Yes or no? It doesn't require cross-community consent. Like, if you wanted cross-community consent, you should have went to the DUP, you should have went to the Unionists in the first place and said, look, we're going to accept this, it's going to change things in Northern Ireland, we'll do the best we can to sort these issues out before we agree to anything, so that there's not as many problems. But you didn't. So why are you saying you need Unionist support now? It doesn't make sense, because that's all you have, bad faith arguments. That's it. Unfortunately, and to be fair, if the protocol was that bad, they'll be voting for the DUP in droves, because the DUP are the only party saying we want to get rid of the protocol, as far as I can see. I think the other kind of Unionist parties are saying, we'll see, dog. Unfortunately, after its disastrous spell in government with Theresa May, the DUP's credibility in Brussels is shot. No amount of blood-curdling rhetoric can disguise the fact that the party squandered its one real chance of power in 2017, because had they sorted things out back then, right, and they could have forced the UK to stay in the EU single market for customs for goods, the entirety of the UK, but instead they squandered their chance and they let Boris Johnson in, and by that time it's too late. Theresa May had a majority with their support, the DUPs. They could have done something, but they chose to be dumb. They miscalculated. Some in the party now appear to see the spectre of insurrection as their only card left, and I hope it doesn't go to that. I really don't. No one wants to see a return for Troubles. Really. And they may be right, but no one wants to go down that road. No one wants to see violence erupt back in Northern Ireland. And do you know what? This time round, I think the Americans, especially with Joe Biden at the helm, will be far more willing to blame the British government for the eruption of the Troubles again, or the situation where violence erupts in Northern Ireland. They will be far more willing to blame us because we are the ones who caused it this time around. I can't speak for what happened back then. I have to do a lot more research on it. I am trying to learn more. But this time round, it will be squarely on us. This leaves moderates to represented by the UUP. It too rejects most elements of the protocol, but has signalled a willingness to compromise and suggested measures to help build trust with the EU. And that's what has to happen here. Through talks, through negotiations, things can be resolved. Whether this would work is an open question. Well, it has worked so far, hasn't it? Because the EU have made concessions around medicines, made concessions around the unilateral action that's been taken by Frost. They've done a few other things. They've talked to businesses on the ground to say, look, what can we do to help you guys out? Help you guys and girls out? What do you guys need? And, even businesses in Northern Ireland said, yeah, we spoke to the EU and they've done these things that we asked them to do. So negotiations can work here. It just depends if the British government and the parties in Stormont want to do that. It's surely worth trying after the DUP's failure because they kind of sucked. Still, the UUP support has topped out at less than 15% in the polls. It isn't enough, and that's because the voters are split between, I think, the DUP, the UUP, and probably a couple other parties. But that's the nature of proportional representation. You get far more say over who you voted for, because it might be the case that there are people in Northern Ireland who believe strongly in the Union, or maybe not even that strongly in the Union, but they don't believe in taking the route the DUP have taken. And that gives you the option to vote for the UUP. One reason for that may be the protocol is not actually the top of the agenda in Northern Ireland, which is not. We've covered this previously. It was the NHS that was their top concern. An Irish news poll found that the Irish Sea border was only the top issue for 11.7% of Unionist voters, which is just over 1 in 10. Just over 1 in 10, not a big issue. Worries about healthcare and the economy loom larger, especially with the Tories doing really bad damage to the Northern Ireland economy. Theresa May being the exemption because she basically had to bribe the DUP to come on board with her. As for the rest of the other parties, they didn't care. And the UUP has the misfortune to have been in charge of health during COVID. That's unlucky. The province's economy, meanwhile, is recovering, but it's hard to see how businesses can invest until they know what long-term legal and economic regime they will be operating under. And that's mainly the main issue. Isn't the Northern Ireland Protocol in that sense? It's the uncertainty around it. It's the Unionists, or some of the Unionists, causing constant problems around it. If that didn't exist, there'd be far more investment in Northern Ireland, because Northern Ireland is in the unique position of exporting to the EU single market and customs union for goods with no checks, no customs, nothing. And also being able to export to GB with no customs, no issues. That's how powerful the position is. And what we know about the custom checks are so expensive. Just the custom checks alone are so expensive that it's putting businesses out. And it's also leading to businesses changing their business models, where some of them are setting shop within the EU, some of them are just flat out refusing to export to the EU, and some EU businesses are refusing to export to the UK because of the problems with the export checks, the VAT, all of this stuff. Northern Ireland's in the unique position of not having to deal with any of that stuff. So Northern Ireland is an ideal spot to set up some sort of manufacturing hub. It really is. But if the DUP keep talking the way they do, and the other Unionists and the British government, it won't invite the kind of investment that it can really get. The EU is fond of claiming that the lack of interest in the protocol shows there's no problem, which is true. Because if there was a problem, more people would be invested in it. Brussels has mistaken a lack of current crisis for a state of stability. The only reason it's going to become a major crisis when it gets whipped up by you guys. In fact, the situation is more akin to a top-heavy galleon whose cannons happen to be sliding around the deck in temporary balance. The one thing, the protocol still hasn't even been fully implemented. That's true. That's another thing where maybe people haven't realised how kind of big the checks are in the protocol until they're being fully implemented. Or maybe the status quo will carry on. Maybe the EU will say, we'll kind of accept not having full checks. I don't know. Thanks to an endless grace period on checks extended by the UK, the EU has threatened to sue but hasn't done it yet, and the EU has every right to sue us in this case but haven't. And I think as long as the UK doesn't deregulate, this state of play could carry on for a while. The truth is that unionists will never accept the protocol, and that's the key issue here in orange, down here. No matter what the EU does, some of these unionists, the more aggressive ones, the ones that the UK is a part of their identity, like a fundamental part because they're sad, those people, the ones that dress up and stuff, those people will never accept the protocol. But the more moderate ones, I think they are more willing to accept it. And so if you can find those ones, you might be okay. But if it's just a bunch of people who are ready to resort to violence because they're not happy with the protocol, it's a sad time. Unfortunately, it looks like the situation will potter along until some kind of crisis precipitates a change. I think until it's whipped up that much, bad things happen, but it may not. Let's hope not anyways. Our government may be hoping to trigger one with the EU by passing these provocative laws, but the threat rings hollow, which is interesting the Telegraph are calling this out. The May 5th election results are likely to weaken the UK's bargaining position rather than strengthen it due to UK unionist divisions. And I also think that if the UK say, this part of the protocol is a problem, and then Michelle O'Neill or someone else in the Sinn Féin says actually it's not, the EU can say, well, evidently, according to Stormont, it's not, and they'll make the UK look stupid, or GB look stupid, or Westminster look stupid, Boris Johnson's government looks stupid. And now it is clearly not the best time for a trade war with Europe, given growing inflation and the war in Ukraine. Also the fact that we're not doing physical checks anymore. Been scrapped, we'll get hammered in a trade war because the EU will check everything. So we won't be able to smuggle anything past them. We still can't now. So say, for example, if there's a 40% tariff on beef, and you try and say, we're exporting chicken because there's only a 20% tariff, or whatever, these things will get checked. And they'll be like, actually, you're trying to smuggle stuff in, you're lying. You're paying full price, or this stuff's gone. You can't export. Your business might get suspended. Who knows? The UK cannot manufacture negotiating strength by passing laws or triggering articles, but will have to wait for the truth of its position to be revealed by events. And either she's talking about a crisis to unfold, or talking about the election in Stormont. Ideally, those events would involve the Unionists getting their act together and becoming a credible party in talks, but the thing is, that's not going to happen. So I think support is really split between the DUP and the UUP by the looks of things. Instead, the worry is that it will take a dire event to break the deadlock, which I don't want to see that. At worst, this could mean an upsurge in unionist protests and violence, which I think could genuinely happen. It could stem from nationalist overconfidence. I mean, I think this is a load of rubbish. If a victory in May sets off a brazen move towards uniting Ireland, or from EU arrogance, it is like it's temporary trick. Okay, let's break that down first before we talk about the stupid points, the really stupid points. So they talk about nationalist overconfidence, talking about United Ireland. I don't think Sinn Féin have really talked about, at least Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland, haven't really talked about uniting Ireland. They haven't really talked about a border poll. It's mainly just douchebags on the internet like me who have talked about border poll, really, because potentially it could happen. But it's up to Brandon Lewis to do that. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. So they haven't talked about it because they know it's provocative. That's why they haven't. Just like, and they know there's bigger issues to deal with as well, like the cost of living crisis, like the pandemic, for example. Just like, the SNP are doing a very similar thing. Despite the fact that they have won a mandate for an independence referendum, they haven't really talked about it. And you might think that's their whole gimmick, right, the SNP, but now's not the time, because there's still problems within the country that have to be dealt with before you can go for an independence vote, because otherwise it does look like political opportunism. And about arrogance from the EU, like the temporary triggering of Article 16, that's a lie. It didn't happen. They didn't trigger Article 16. Someone in the Commission apparently said it would be a good idea, and then I think they got a call from the Taoiseach, I think it's how you pronounce it, and he goes, "What are you doing?" And they said, "No, nothing, bro. No, nothing's happening over here." And they shut it down real quick, within hours, to the point where I was going to cover it, and then I think I had to cover the whole saga because it happened that quickly. It just unfolded within hours. Or it may be that the collapse of power sharing, which the only reason that would happen is if the DUP or the UUP, I think, don't take their seats in Stormont. The reason why power sharing keeps collapsing is because one party doesn't like democracy, really. It could happen from a confrontation, from the UK finally taking advantage of post-Brexit freedoms to diverge. That's where it will happen, I think. That's where we'll see problems. Once the UK diverges from the EU, once we see, hormone beef and things like that, that's when something bad will happen. This will trigger a demand from Brussels for more checks on the Irish Sea. None of these are particularly happy prospects for Northern Ireland. I think how it could play out is, right, the UK starts deregulating, stuff gets into the UK, hormone beef or whatever. That stuff then gets exported to Northern Ireland. The checks aren't stringent enough, or nobody cares enough, gets through Northern Ireland and maybe into the EU single market, talking about Ireland, for example. And once people find this stuff, that's when it's done. That's when the EU are like, look, it's enough. You have to either increase the checks or the TCA goes out the window. That's where we could face problems. Alternatively, the EU could start to act like the great strategic entity it fancies itself to be, and realise that in a world increasingly menaced by aggressive dictators, the democratic world cannot afford to be distracted and divided by a niggling dispute, blah, 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 blah. So what they're trying to say is, in a world cursed with dictators, right, the EU should be nicer to us because these are just minor issues between friends, right? So it's just ridiculous, let's be honest here. It's absolutely ridiculous. But that point there is so dumb, because at the end of the day, what kind of democracy goes back on what it's promised? What kind of democracy would do that? A really bad one. It could be for once head off a crisis instead of waiting for one, and pigs might fly, but only if they're subject to sanitary and phytosanitary checks. That's a funny joke, to be honest. But the simple fact is, right, the EU does need to kind of game theory this stuff out of what will happen once that deregulation kicks in, or once the UK doesn't do the checks it has to do. The EU has to figure that stuff out. Maybe they have done. Maybe they'll say the suspension of the TCA will do it. I don't know. But this is a pretty nonsensical argument, talking about EU arrogance and all this nonsense, when it's the arrogance of the British government that have caused this, and the Unionist division that was caused by Brexit. Because, I don't think, without Brexit, I don't think Sinn Féin would be the largest single party in the Stormont. I really don't. But anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. It's not unfinished. Apparently it's unfinished business. This Brexit stuff, even though they said it would be done. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.